Namaste and very good afternoon to one and all. My name is Devi Prasad and not the one from Hera Fairy movie. This is the one who works with Apollo Health and Lifestyle. Can you give me a huge round of applause, please? A huge one. Look, I need this beforehand because afterwards there is no guarantee. Someone very knowledgeable once told me the best way to address a key gathering is to stand up, speak up, and very quickly wrap up. So what it means is, it will have a good beginning, a very quick ending, and nothing in between. Just clarifying my role as a moderator. I have taken a clap for myself, but I'm not taking a clap for all of you. Can I have a big round of applause for all of you, please? And especially the one sitting on the last rows. Because I believe the best brains are found in the last rows of the conference halls. Now, since I am here, how is it possible that I can start the moderation before thanking BW, right? Business World. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And 4 line हम सब HR वालों के लिए. दिल से सुनते हैं, दिमाग से समझते हैं. इंसानी जज्बात और बिजनेस दोनों संभालते हैं. रिश्ते हो या रोल्स, फर्ज निभाते हैं हम. HR के नाम पर फक्र से मुस्कुराते हैं हम. So that's for all of you HR professionals here. Today we are diving into a theme that is not a trend, but a timeless truth. And the topic here is, which I'm going to discuss here is, the HR strategies for inclusive talent management, right? Inclusion isn't a policy, it's a practice. It's not just a metric, it's a mindset. And it's no longer good to have, but it's a must lead with. Now to ensure that all of you have the required concentration, and before you start the moderation, may I request all of you to stand up for just 10 seconds? So you have to follow my instructions clearly for 3 seconds, and then we get the moderation started, right? So what you have to do is, I'll request the panel also to stand up and do the same activity. Yeah? So you have to raise your left hand like this, left hand. Right hand, stand next to your peer and put your finger like this. For example, I need to put my index finger here and keep my left palm. So the person who's standing on my left can put their index finger. Yeah. Right? All of you? Clear? Yeah? आप इधर आ जाओ, मैं बताता हूँ. एक second. Just I'll show it to you. Put it. ना आप हाथ दिखाइए. So it has to be like this. Yeah? Clear? Now the moment I say 1, 2, 3, you need to do 2 things. One is you need to try and remove your index finger from the other person's hand and parallelly try to grab the other hand, right? 2 things simultaneously. So I'll start. 1, 2, 2.5. Okay, let's try one more time. 1, 2, 3. All right, a big round of applause. Let's get the moderation started. Thank you. So the interesting thing is, how many of you love stories? You love stories? Oh, lovely. So a manager kept rejecting employees or candidates, prospective employees, whenever he used to see with people with gaps. And a candidate returned after a career break due to caregiving. Reluctantly hired, she outperformed everyone in her cohort. The manager later said, I almost missed brilliance because I could not see beyond absence. So the summary of the story is, bias is not always loud. It often hides in habits, right? So with this, I would like to ask the first question. I'd like to have the views of Dr. Capt and Pranav. What are some common examples of unconscious bias in hiring or promotions?
Thank you, Devi, and it is always an honor to be a part of your events. So after catching fingers and such an electric start, coming directly to the topic is quite brutal, and that also promotions and hiring. But the way I see it is this unconscious bias is a part of human nature, right? Even if you like it, don't like it, you want to chip it, don't chip it, it will come. But if we are very true to the way the things are done, right? For example, in hiring, there is a JD, there is a CV. I think most of us are HR folks here. We know how the thing happens, right? Then the things are simple and clean, okay? Now, a typical thing, right? The place we belong to, the colors we like, the genders we support, right? Our own thinking and ideology of some location, place, company, right? These things are very natural to come, to us. Extending it to the time of promotions, one thing which I see coming to all the appraisers is a recency effect, right? And there also, if I see, the rules of the game are simple. There is a JD, there is a CV at the time of hiring. You follow that, things are simple. Competency, checklist, values of the system, culture fit, we all are fine. If we don't follow this, then there is a question mark and you have not so rightful hire, or your unconscious bias is being played. At the time of promotions, what I feel is, of course, if there is a KPI set, the OKRs defined KPI set, right, and you have the rightful dialogue happening during the year, things are fine and simple. You add the things for all the quarters, you have the rating, no doubts about it. And these days we have done enough mechanism how you measure the things. But if these things are not done, and then in promotions, one thing which we all come to know is, if quarter 4 is the time when everyone shows you that all your KPIs are getting fulfilled, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, nothing much happened, and we get swayed. The recency effect, right? So there also, if I say you have the KPIs, you have the continuous dialogue, you are fine with that, I think things are fine, right? So these are the things which I feel during the hiring and at the time of promotion, even, the way we can be deflected by our decisions, but we follow these small things, things are fine. The unconscious bias would not play that much, right? But even if the thing doesn't happen, most of us have seen failures in our lives. Most of us have not seen so much good appraisal. Sometimes it happens. But then I always say that let not someone's opinion about you be your reality, right? At the end of the day, appraisal is not the rating what you get, but generally we feel that what hikes what we get matters more, right? And what career growth what we get matters more. So Devi, these were my points which I wanted to bring in front of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pranav. I believe spotting bias is the first step towards inclusive hiring. But before you do, can I have a big round of applause for him, please? A big one. So what he wanted to say, I will just tell in 2 lines in Hindi. क्योंकि मेरी अंग्रेजी थोड़ी कमजोर है. चेहरा देख के फैसले जो किए जाते हैं, चेहरा देख के फैसले जो किए जाते हैं, तो कभी कभी हीरा भी पत्थर समझा जाता है, right? So 60% of our employees report bias at work, and 64 witnesses have actually confirmed it last year. It's one of the leading reports that has been published. So with this, what we'll do is we'll move to the next one. But before we move, what I'll try to do is I'll tell you again short story, right? So in a tech firm, every hiring manager was made to review the anonymized resumes. इसमें नाम नहीं होता है, no names, no photographs, no gender, no age, no college. And the person they selected turned out to be a woman from a rural engineering college. She later led their most innovative project for the organization and helped them in contributing positively towards the growth of the organization. So the summary is, when names disappear, real merit appears. And why do I say this? Because 78% of organizations now have formal DI policies or are building towards that. So with this, I'd like to now ask Dr. Sujatha, what tools or protocols help hiring managers become aware of biases? Over to you, Dr. Sujatha.
Thank you so much for that, Devi. And what you mentioned, which is the hira might become a patthar, completely agree with you. I'm sharing something that I came across during conversations, which is that this person came up and said that the hiring manager asked questions around which university the person had studied from, had passed out from. And when the person was told that he had passed out from an IIT and a symbiosis, and of late there is Harvard and Stanford coming in, then the person got recruited, right? So the person had tailored their response according to what the hiring manager wanted to hear, right? So just like, everything gets rigged, there can be a rigging that happens the other way as well. And hence we need to be very careful about what kind of questions are asked. And in order to ask those questions, I would go back a couple of steps and talk about culture, right? What does the organization stand for? What does the organization's culture stand for? Where are the values of the organization? And going back to what you mentioned, Devi, which is the blind hiring, I think that is something that a lot of organizations are embracing, because it's so important not to know the backstory or have an assumption about the backstory even before you get to meet the person. Because there is going to be a hero out there. How about going and identifying the hero on your own? Right? If I go back to the culture of the organization, and it also talks about how are you empowering, creating awareness among your leaders, how are you empowering people within your organization to embrace diversity. And here, diversity has actually become a very vast term. We're talking about genders, we're talking about ethnicity, we're talking about sexual preferences, and it's about embracing all of them. Another story that I want to share is when, as a coach, I am a pro bono coach, there was a person who came up to me as part of life coaching, and he told me that the moment the manager got to know that he had a same gender preference, all the projects that were given to him moved away, all right? Now, and we're talking about leaders, and we're talking about unconscious biases. And it's so important for us to take away the affinity bias here. And if we don't do that, we're coming in the way of a talent's progress and ambition and aspiration. So again, I would go back to what does the culture tell you? What does the organization that you're a part of? How does the organization help you understand our own unconscious biases? And it has to be leadership driven, right? If we see on a stage, another situation that I experienced recently, that, there was a very well-known cricketer who was invited to an organization. And towards the end, they were getting ready for the photo ops. And then there were about 4 or 5 men who went up there. That's it. It was a male cricketer. We have a Mithali. We have so many other women cricketers as well. These are all very subtle messages that get sent out. All that is required to be done is to pull some lady or pull another person who needs to be included in this entire journey and showcase that. Because when you start doing it, when the leader walks the talk, the rest of the organization will follow. And these are things that need to be done consciously. There can be unconscious biases, whether in the hiring process, and we can put our checks and balances around it. We can have structured ways of interviewing and all of it, but it is also embedded in the culture of the organization. And the culture of the organization is what proliferates to the DNA of the individuals in the organization. I would look at it as that kind of a spectrum, not just as a hiring process, because that makes it a lot more inclusive and appreciative of the kind of diverse ideas that would come in from various people who get hired into your organization or your teams. Whether you have an affinity for a color or a university or whatever that is, but it's about bringing everyone together, and it's possible, and it's done in a lot of organizations, and that is the success that we'd like to talk about as well. Over
Thank
to
you. A big round of applause for Dr. Sujatha, please. Awareness tools aren't windows, they are mirrors, right? And what it means is pearls remain hidden in the water if it's not clear, right? You may have pearls in the water, they may be hidden because the water is not clear. But real recognition comes when the gauge is sincere, right? So what it means is, छुप जाते हैं मोती जब पानी साफ नहीं होता है. छुप जाते हैं मोती जब पानी साफ नहीं होता है. पहचान तभी होती है जब नजर में भाव होता है, right? So that means a lot when you talk about, how clear are we in terms of our thought process, right? It all starts from that. So with this, I'll move to the next one. And again, a short story to be followed. A manager rated her team based on who spoke most in meetings, right? जो ज़्यादा बात करता है मैनेजर को लगा कि मैं भी रेटिंग को ज़्यादा कर दूंगा या कर दूंगी, right? A quiet member always delivered but rarely spoke. An HR partner suggested using project-based metrics that the person who was speaking less was later promoted and became the go-getter, the mentor for the new hires. So what the summary of the story is, voices vary, but value speaks louder when measured right? So with this, I would like to ask Ms. Sreeja, how do you prevent bias in performance evaluations or leadership pipelines? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Devi, for the question. In fact, what you said earlier, the water can be muddy, right? So I think, first of all, it is important for us to realize is that water can be muddy. Biases exist because we all go through certain experiences, certain events in our life because of which the biases are built over a period of time. So I think important is to know, yes, biases will be there because once we know that, then talking about it becomes far more easier. In terms of leadership pipelines, promotions, how do we ensure that biases don't creep in? Now, can we have zero bias? It's very difficult. But can we take away biases? Can we minimize them? Becomes very important. So I think two parts to this. One is the whole culture piece of it, the whole behavior. What is it that leadership, and the people down the line should carry? And Dr. Sujatha, of course, spoke about it. And the other one comes is that how do we build our structure, build interventions in the organization in a way that we are able to minimize biases. For example, if it comes to performance evaluations, do we have clear-cut frameworks which talk about projects, which talk about project KPIs, like Devi was saying, rather than somebody only talking about it? So how are we measuring people? Are there KPIs? What kind of, how are ratings anchored, right? Are they anchored on the immediate behaviors, or are they anchored on demonstrated behaviors over a period of time and what the person has delivered? I think putting structure helps in minimizing such biases. And then what are the level of calibrations that happen? So for example, in our organization, the way we look at it is we follow normalization. The bell curve is what we follow, right? So in the bell curve, we look at bell curve across functions, across locations, right? So in the field, in the sales team, what's the kind of bell curve it looks like? How does it look like in corporate? How does it look like in a factory? The way, a bias, the proximity bias. Somebody is very close to me. I see the person every day. I may rate the person very differently than person who's sitting very far away, maybe in a factory or a field. So generally, you would see a bell curve for a corporate office looks very different than a bell curve for other places. Very, very real situation. So are we looking at data? So one is structural interventions, and then what does those interventions give us in terms of data? And then we see whether the interventions we are putting together, do they have an impact? So, we put all of that down, and then we look at other curves looking. So there's gender, there's location, there is tenure that people spend in the organization. There are multiple kind of biases that can come. And if we look at data, the data can throw very stark results. And that is why structural interventions, data, and then of course, educating people. Telling people again and again, because a lot of these biases are unconscious. It has to be surfaced up, told to people. So how are we orienting our people? And then fourth, I would say, is ultimately look at what people are saying. Ask people for feedback. Listen to their feedback. So all of this, these are all hard matrices. And the softer part is the whole culture piece that Dr. Sujatha was also talking about. Right? I think all of this put together is when we can try and we can see that how do we keep biases to a minimum. I think that's what my
Wonderful
answer would be.
thoughts. A big round of applause for her, please. A good one. Thank you, Sreeja. And very rightly said, structure and transparency are not extra. They are essential, right? बोलने से नहीं, काम से पहचान होती है. नापा जाए तो मेहनत की शान होती है. It all depends, what kind of hard work we are putting in, what kind of difference we are trying to make at the end of the day. With this, I'll move to another story, and this is, I'm sure, will be also close to Major Nalini. The work that she's currently doing right now. A visually impaired intern struggled with basic navigation at work. Rather than replacing her, the team revamped its digital system and signages. She later helped design the new accessibility policy. So the summary here is, inclusion is not offering a chair, it's redesigning the room. So with this, I'd like to ask Major Nalini, what does an inclusive workplace truly look like? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Devi. See, as you can see from my appointment, I am not a core HR person. So what I will talk is more from an experience. And as Devi has touched upon my army experience, when we talk of inclusivity, let's say, inclusivity is no more a necessity, or no more a nicety, it is a necessity. So let me just explain this with a simple example. During Operation Parakram, there's a small item called first field dressing. It's like a blood absorbing pad which soldiers carry on them so that in case of any injury, they can use it. So during Operation Parakram, I was from logistic department. This was a major issue because this thing was in short supply. So we were brainstorming about how can we ask industries to, speed up the production and all. Suddenly, one lady officer got up and said, see, the purpose of this first field dressing is to absorb blood. So why can't we use individually packed sanitary pads for that? And that actually was used in the army. So this is what happens when we bring in diversity, when we bring in inclusivity. As Dr. Sujatha said, it is the leadership who has to walk the talk. Like I'm representing Michael Job Center, which is an institute which caters for underprivileged girls. So we do not differentiate on any other factor other than the factor that the parents cannot afford to financially pay for the girl child. We do not differentiate whether a child is from a Christian society, a religion, any other religion, or from any particular state. We have students from 16 states in India. So that is inclusivity in action, right? Another thing, like when I'm asked, what does inclusivity look like to you? So to me, it looked like the famous television show called Star Trek. Where the people were hired for what they bring to the table and not how they look, how they behave, how they dress up. Because as HRs, we have to ensure that the goal is supreme. We need to keep an eye on the goal. Whoever fills in those shoes, there's a wonderful movie called The Intern, where a 70+ guy, so when we are talking about diversity, we are also talking about age diversity, right? We are way past LGBTQ. In diversity, in most of the companies restrict at, women hiring, or probably a person with a different ability, or a person with a different sexual orientation. But like Devi said, somebody who can't speak good English. Because English speaking is not the thing. Like when I'm hiring my professors, I don't see what is their marks. I see whether they can teach or not. Because I am hiring them to teach, right? So that is what inclusivity looks like to me. Thank you, Devi.
Awesome. Golden nuggets coming from Major Nalini. A big round of applause, please. And what she rightly mentioned is, true inclusion is when everyone gets a seat at the table, right? And inclusive teams are in fact 35% more productive, and they make almost 87% better decisions as per the latest report.
May I just put in one more point
Auntie,
here
bilkul,
as an addition to what he said, that inclusivity is where everybody gets a seat at the table. To add on to that, inclusivity is where everybody gets to eat at the table.
Oh, a big round of applause. मैं इसके ऊपर 2 लाइन बोल दूं? जहां हर कदम पर सबका साथ हो, जहां हर कदम पर सबका साथ हो, वही जगह सच में सबका खास हो. All right, now क्या होता है? Before I talk about the next story and I come to my dear friend Madhu, so what I do normally when I meet Madhu is I ensure that I have a very firm handshake with her. And the reason is she heads the global talent acquisition at Wipro. And you know when I meet talent acquisition heads, what's the best thing that I do? I इनका हाथ ना छूट जाए, right? All right, so I'll come to the next one. So this is during a crisis, and the Ivy League recruit, waited for approval. And there was a self-taught coder as well, who was not from Ivy League, and he fixed the glitch in hours. Then the CTO called and said, one had pedigree and the other one had urgency, and both are required. So the summary here is, degree may open doors, but skills break through walls. With this, I would like to share that as per Deloitte, which has been one of the previous employer of Madhu, 76% of employers say skill-based hiring is more effective in performance outcomes than degree-based hiring. So with this, Madhu, the question to you is, degree versus competency, which matters more? Over to you.
How could I basically respond to this? You've already given the response here that, what I have actually experienced so far, and, which is true as well. But frankly speaking, currently what we see is still degrees counted in all the assessments that we do, which is the starting point. But if you ask me my preference, I'll say, which is very true in the current scenario where I am, skills is a currency. So I will basically quote that skill is a currency, and if you really have to see competence of a person who brings in the right value, okay, who can convert that into action, is most required in an organization, because after you really get the person with the right kind of a qualification, which is fundamentally important to get the right foundation in, which is which is a prerequisite for the corporate still today. But once the person comes on board, right, what matters is what he brings on table. And my preference will be always to look at whether the person that I am evaluating has the right kind of a competence, has the right kind of skills. More than anything else, the person has the right kind of a grit to really handle a situation which is adverse, right? In the normal scenario, in business as usual, everyone is able to perform. But where the action lies is where the person really is tested, is with the skills of resilience, of adaptability, of change management. These are skills which is not taught in the academics, right? And degree will give you certain level of foundation to give you a little bit of confidence of really cracking an interview. But what happens on the ground on first day and after that is that you'll be put in a project where you have to really prove yourself in front of client, in front of your bosses, in front of your superiors, peers. You have to be in a competitive world. Will you be able to really sustain in that kind of an environment where every day counts, and there your competency and your skills of really showing up each day with the kind of output that you can bring on table, with value add, which an organization is looking at, with the competitiveness is required. I will always say that, the first will be to look at the kind of competence and the skill of adaptability, agility that a talent can really bring on table. Having said that, I think because the topic is more on diversity and inclusion, I always feel that, even this aspect of looking at whether to look at a degree or education, or to look at the experience or the competency, it is also a matter of diversity. So the way that I look at diversity and inclusion is that whether you talk about any segment of diversity, I have run a culture journey of diversity of thought. Because in diversity of thought, everything comes together. Because the starting point is the thought. If you really do not start thinking from that aspect, that will really impact even when I'm making a decision of getting somebody onboarded. That's the first point of my thought, to really say that this is the right person who I would like to, get into my organization, because the person is the right fit for the organization culture. The person will be able to sustain in an environment which is quite challenging. The person will have a viewpoint, person will have a value add to give to the organization, rather than only looking at a degree or an education. I think very clearly I'm tilted towards having skill as a currency, which can be tokenized, it can be tracked, it can be traded, right? These three things is very important for anyone to have, because when you are in a journey of really elevating, that's all it counts. It doesn't count where you have come from.
क्या बात है, बहुत बढ़िया. Skill can be tokenized, trained, and trade. Tracked. Oh, wonderful. Golden words from Madhu. Thank you so much. Merit is no longer needed or framed in gold, but coded in skills, as mentioned by her. And the best, another point I loved about is the diversity of thoughts. Such a wonderful point. Thank you. So, last two lines from my end, and we will be able to wrap up this session. सिर्फ डिग्री से काम नहीं चलता है, right? What mentioned by Madhu. हुनर की भी असली पहचान है. जो काम आता है वही असली संग्राम है, right? So with this, I'll try to summarize what all we spoke here. We spoke is inclusion is not just a checkbox, it's a choice. We spoke about diversity of thoughts. We spoke about skills. We spoke about a truly inclusive workplace does not just accept diversity, it amplifies it. Not just who we hire, but how we hear them, help them, and hold them up. And when talent feels safe, seen, and supported, that is when they soar. And thank you so much. Dil se HR, Dimag se decisions. Thank you so much. Devi Prasad signing off. A big round of applause to all of you. God bless you. Thank you, team.